News with b.c.begley. I am your host, and it's Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025, and here are your top news stories for today. Construction crews began demolishing part of the east wing of the White House on Monday as part of President Donald Trump's plan to build a new White House ballroom. President Trump previously said the project would not interfere with the existing structure, describing it as, quote, near it, but not touching it. Despite that assurance, parts of the East Wing are being removed to make room for the new addition. The ballroom construction started last month, and Trump referenced the ongoing work during a White House event this week. He later posted that the East Wing would be, quote, fully modernized, and that the ballroom would be, quote, completely separate from the White House itself. The East Wing, traditionally used by the First Lady and her staff, has been cleared out ahead of the demolition. President Trump said the ballroom will hold up to 900 guests, up from the original plan for 650, and will cost about $250 million, an increase from the initial $200 million estimate. He said he will help fund the project personally, with assistance from private donors, including Comcast Corporation, NBC News has reported. The project marks the most significant alteration to the White House since major renovations back in the 1940s. Republican leaders are preparing a new, longer, continuing resolution to fund the government as the shutdown enters its fourth week. The current clean CR through November the 21st, repeatedly rejected by Senate Democrats over health care disputes, is seen as insufficient to complete full-year appropriations. GOP leaders are debating new deadlines, with late January emerging as the most supported option, though some hardlined Republicans favor a full-year CR to block spending increases. Appropriators, however, oppose a year-long stopgap, arguing it would derail progress on setting new spending levels. A mid-December CR has been floated, but faces pushback from conservatives who fear it could lead to a rushed omnibus spending bill before the holidays. House Speaker Mike Johnson has resisted recalling the House, using the delay to pressure Democrats into accepting the GOP's current funding plan. Senate Minority Leader John Thune warned that continued inaction could force Republicans into a, quote, long-term CR mode, which he called undesirable. Johnson acknowledged that the November the 21st deadline might not allow enough time for appropriators to finish their work, The Hill has reported. Negotiations on several key appropriations bills have stalled due to Senate Democrats' objections during the shutdown. With the standoff at 22 days and counting, the second largest in U.S. history, both parties remain divided, with the Democrats demanding health care concessions and Republicans refusing to negotiate until the government reopens. The White House has paused plans for a second summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, officials have said. The move reflects Washington's recognition that the gap between Russia and Ukraine remains too wide for a peace deal. A White House official confirmed that there are, quote, no plans for Trump and Putin to meet in the near future. President Trump told reporters that he has not yet made a final decision on the meeting, saying he does not want to have a, quote, wasted meeting. He had previously announced plans to meet Putin in Budapest within 2 weeks, but that plan shifted after President Trump's tense meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, where he urged both sides to end the war, Axios has reported. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's expected meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also fell through after an unproductive phone call. The Kremlin dismissed reports of a postponed summit, saying that no date had ever been set. Zelensky said Ukraine accepted Trump's ceasefire proposal along current front lines, but that Russia rejected it. He also argued that providing Ukraine with long-range weapons like Tomahawk missiles could push Putin toward serious negotiations. A U.S. federal agent and a man allegedly in the United States illegally were shot Tuesday morning during an immigration raid in Los Angeles' historic South Central neighborhood. The shooting happened around 9 a.m. local time on East 20th Street, where federal vehicles had boxed in a suspect's car. Officials said the man, who had previously escaped custody, tried to flee by ramming a law enforcement vehicle. Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said officers fired, quote, defensive shots to protect themselves and the public. The suspect was shot in the elbow, and the deputy U.S. Marshal was injured in the hand by a ricochet bullet. Both were hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries, and the Marshal's condition was described as stable. The FBI is leading the investigation, working with the U.S. Marshal's Office, Homeland Security, and the LAPD, which provided traffic control but was not involved in the shooting. Protesters later gathered outside California Hospital Medical Center where the injured agent was being treated, KTLA-5 has reported. Local activist groups announced a rally criticizing the raid and the nearby school's lockdown procedures. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Usha arrived in Jerusalem on Tuesday for high-level talks aimed at reinforcing the Gaza ceasefire deal. They were greeted at Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office by Netanyahu and his wife Sarah in a small private ceremony. The first meeting between Vance and Netanyahu will be followed by an expanded session with senior staff. Vance and Usha landed at Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion Airport and met U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee and White House envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. The vice president is expected to remain in the region until Thursday and meet families of hostages whose bodies have not yet been returned. The talks aim to stabilize the first phase of the ceasefire and encourage both Israel and Hamas to make further concessions. Both sides have accused each other of violating the ceasefire since it began on October the 10th, but insist they remain committed. U.S. President Donald Trump has emphasized that the 20-point plan he brokered must succeed, the New York Post has reported. A senior Israeli official said Vance's trip is intended to advance negotiations to the second phase of the ceasefire. Under the agreement, Israel awaits Hamas's return of 15 hostages' remains, while Israel returned 15 Palestinian bodies on Tuesday. Okay, here's a look at the live weather radar from the National Weather Service, and now let's go into the national weather forecast for today. Chilly, rainy weather will persist across the Great Lakes and the Northeast for the next few days, with lake-effect thunderstorms possible near Lake Erie. Rain will continue over New England today, but should taper off by Wednesday night as the low-pressure system moves into the Canadian Maritimes. Colder, drier air with gusty winds will spread from the Midwest and the Ohio Valley into the Mid-Atlantic as high pressure builds. Meanwhile, South Texas will experience near-record warmth with temperatures soaring into the 90s, and dry conditions will prevail in the Northwest before rain chances increase midweek. Across the south-central plains, showers and thunderstorms are expected Thursday night into Friday, with a risk of heavy rainfall as a surface low develops. The Louvre reopened on Wednesday for the first time since the daring daylight theft of France's crown jewels. 4 thieves stole 8 priceless pieces from the museum's Apollo room in just 4 minutes, sparking a massive manhunt. Paris prosecutors said the jewels are worth about $102 million, and that around 100 investigators are working to recover them. Authorities fear the thieves may try to melt the jewels down for resale, which would drastically reduce their value. The prosecutor urged the culprits not to destroy the pieces, calling the theft a blow to France's cultural heritage. Museum director was summoned to appear before the French Senate's Cultural Committee amid public outrage. The culture minister called the heist a, quote, wound for all of us, emphasizing the Louvre's symbolic importance to French identity, NBC News has reported. The culture minister defended the museum's security, insisting its systems, quote, worked despite the theft. and France's interior minister admitted the incident was a, quote, failure, though he said the alarms and police response functioned correctly. The brazen robbery has raised national concern over the protection of France's most treasured cultural assets. Russia launched large-scale overnight attacks on Kyiv, killing at least 2 people and injuring 5, including a toddler, officials said on Wednesday. Kyiv's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, reported waves of drone and missile strikes that caused fires and destruction across multiple districts. In one area, 1 person was killed and 10 others were rescued after drone debris struck a residential tower. Another person died in the Dnipro district, where a building caught fire and 10 residents were evacuated. Fires also broke out in other districts due to falling missile and drone fragments. Explosions were reported across at least 4 districts, shattering windows and damaging homes. Attacks also hit other regions. In Kharkiv, drones damaged railway infrastructure and cars, while in Odessa's Izmail city, port and energy facilities were struck. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged U.S. President Donald Trump to send long-range Tomahawk missiles to strengthen Ukraine's position in ceasefire negotiations. However, President Trump backed away from the idea after a recent White House meeting with Zelensky following a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Al Jazeera has reported. The anticipated Trump-Putin summit was then later postponed, with President Trump saying that he did not want to have a, quote, wasted meeting. North Korea launched multiple short-range ballistic missiles on Wednesday, its first such test in 5 months, just days before U.S. President Donald Trump's planned trip to South Korea. South Korea's military said the missiles, fired from an area south of Pyongyang, flew about 350 kilometers northeast but did not land in the sea. Officials in Seoul said their forces remain on high alert and are coordinating closely with the United States. Japan's Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, confirmed that Tokyo is sharing real-time missile warning data with Washington and Seoul. The launches come as Trump prepares for an Asia tour, including visits to Malaysia, Japan, and South Korea, though he is not expected to attend the main APEC summit. Analysts believe North Korea timed the test to draw global attention ahead of the meetings and assert its status as a nuclear power. Leader Kim Jong-un has intensified weapons testing since his 2019 nuclear talks with Trump collapsed over sanctions disputes, the Associated Press has reported. Kim recently indicated he might resume diplomacy if Washington drops its demand for denuclearization. Earlier this month, North Korea unveiled its new Hwasong-20 intercontinental ballistic missile, capable of carrying multiple nuclear warheads. Observers say Pyongyang could test the new ICBM soon to reinforce its claim as a legitimate nuclear weapon state. Polish authorities detained a Ukrainian citizen on Tuesday for allegedly working with Russian intelligence on a sabotage campaign, the country's top prosecutor has said. Prosecutors claim the suspect and others plan to send shipments containing explosives and incendiary materials to Ukraine, intended to spontaneously ignite or explode during transport. The alleged goal of the operation was to intimidate populations and destabilize EU countries supporting Ukraine. 2 additional Ukrainian citizens, suspected of involvement, were also arrested in Romania, this according to Polish officials. The detainee in Poland was among 8 people recently arrested on suspicion of preparing sabotage acts across the country. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk confirmed the arrest on social media, while Special Services Coordinator described the suspect's activities as reconnaissance of military and critical infrastructure, preparing sabotage resources, and carrying out attacks. Poland has detained dozens over suspected sabotage and espionage since Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022, ABC News has reported. Last month, Lithuanian prosecutors uncovered a Russia-linked network planning arson attacks in multiple European countries. Western officials have documented numerous Russia-linked attacks across Europe since the Ukraine invasion, including car sabotage, cargo plane bomb plots, arson, hacking, and espionage. The incidents reflect ongoing efforts by Russia and its proxies to disrupt European security and intimidate nations backing Ukraine. Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy began serving his 5-year prison sentence on Tuesday at La Santé prison in Paris. He is the first former French president in living memory to be incarcerated and only the third in French history to go to prison. Sarkozy, who led France from 2007 to 2012, was sentenced in September for criminal conspiracy over plans to secure campaign funds from late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. A Paris judge ruled he should start serving his sentence immediately, without waiting for his appeal, citing the offense's serious disruption to public order. For security reasons, Sarkozy will be held separately from other inmates. He continues to maintain his innocence regarding the charges. The incarceration is described as, quote, completely unprecedented, marking the first time a French leader has been jailed since World War II, France 24 has reported. Sarkozy's sentence has fueled national and international attention due to its historic nature. Authorities emphasize the seriousness of the criminal conspiracy and its impact on public trust in political institutions. His imprisonment highlights France's commitment to accountability for high-ranking officials, regardless of their former status. Today is October the 22nd, 2025, and on this day in history, in the year 1962, President John F. Kennedy announced the discovery of Soviet missile installations in Cuba and declared a naval quarantine to prevent further shipments, escalating Cold War tensions. In the year 1975, the Soviet space probe Venera 9 became the first to transmit photographs from the surface of another planet, revealing Venus's rocky terrain beneath its thick clouds. And in the year 2012, cyclist Lance Armstrong was officially stripped of his 7 Tour de France titles and banned from Olympic sports after being found guilty of doping violations. October the 22nd is also National Make a Dog's Day, a day dedicated to showing appreciation for our canine companions. Okay, everybody, it's 17 past the hour, and we're going to do a quick market update. NASDAQ is down 0.84%, gold is down 2.07%, oil is up 2.59%, Bitcoin is down 0.12%, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is also down 0.31%, and the S&P 500 is down 0.52%. So the markets are pretty much down today. Now let's go into the top U.S. news stories for today. Atlanta police credited the family of Billy Cagle, 49, for helping prevent a potential mass shooting at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Cagle was arrested Monday after his family in Cartersville, Georgia, reported concerns that he might open fire at the airport, which was about 55 miles away. Police said Cagle had an AR-15 rifle with 27 rounds in his truck and outside the airport. Atlanta Police Sergeant Tywana Jones relayed real-time details from the family, including the fact Cagle wore a short-sleeved blue polo shirt, which helped officers identify him quickly. Officer Maisha Banks, the first to spot Cagle, said the clothing description was crucial in allowing her to apprehend him safely. Atlanta Police Chief Darren Shearbaum thanked the family for reporting Cagle, saying their action saved lives, including his own, NBC News has reported. Cagle faces state charges for domestic threats, attempted aggravated assault, and firearms violations, as well as federal charges including attempted violence at an international airport. His criminal record includes a 2000 Georgia felony for marijuana distribution and a 1997 Florida misdemeanor for carrying a concealed weapon. Cagle has faced financial difficulties, with multiple foreclosures and a 2011 bankruptcy filing listing over $450,000 in liabilities. His wife, Tiffany Beck Cagle, filed for divorce on Tuesday, citing his alleged cruel treatment and habitual drug addiction. A federal raid in New York City's Chinatown targeting alleged counterfeit goods sales turned chaotic on Friday as protesters clashed with ICE agents. Department of Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said the operation was targeted and intelligence-driven, focusing on criminal activity related to counterfeit merchandise. Protesters shouted obscenities, obstructed law enforcement, and blocked vehicles, with at least one arrested for assaulting a federal officer. Advocates reported that between 15 and 40 vendors were arrested and at least 2 locals were also detained for protesting the raid. New York City officials quickly distanced themselves, with Mayor Eric Adams' press secretary emphasizing the city does not cooperate with federal civil deportation enforcement. City police monitored the area near Canal Street and 26 Federal Plaza, prepared to intervene if the situation had escalated, Fox News has reported. Public advocate Jermaine Williams criticized the operation, saying it appeared militarized and targeted black vendors, calling it more about, quote, fear and chaos than public safety. Socialist mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani also condemned the raid as, quote, aggressive and reckless, accusing federal authorities of creating fear rather than safety. And the city comptroller, Brad Lander, stated street vendors are not a national security threat and then criticized the use of military-style vehicles and a national law enforcement response. DHS said it will provide additional details about the arrested individuals once available. Roughly 42 million Americans face the risk of losing food assistance in November due to the ongoing federal government shutdown. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP or food stamps, is expected to run out of money in about 2 weeks, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins has said. Rollins warned that millions of vulnerable families could be left without access to essential food programs if funding is not restored. She blamed the Democrats on social media for prioritizing political goals over food security, while Democrats argue Republicans are refusing to negotiate a funding deal that includes expiring Obamacare subsidies. Last week, the USDA notified states that there may not be enough money to pay full November SNAP benefits if the shutdown continues, asking them to hold off on payments. SNAP provides assistance to roughly 1 in 8 Americans, with an average benefit of $188 per person per month as of May, CNN has reported. The program is the nation's largest anti-hunger initiative, supporting millions of low-income families nationwide. SNAP has a contingency fund of about $6 billion, but November's benefits are projected to total roughly $8 billion. The USDA has noted that multi-year contingency funding could be used in the event of a lapse, but it's unclear whether the Trump administration will release the additional funds. The potential shortfall highlights the immediate impact of the shutdown on basic needs for millions of Americans. Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said public pressure will likely grow on Republicans to extend Affordable Care Act health insurance subsidies, a central issue in the ongoing government shutdown. The federal government remains largely closed after Senate Republicans and Democrats failed to pass a spending bill on Monday to reopen it. Democrats insist the ACA subsidies, which help over 20 million people afford monthly premiums, must be extended before they expire at the end of the year. With open enrollment beginning on November the 1st, many Americans using state marketplaces could face sharply higher costs if subsidies lapse. Jeffries told NPR that the importance of Congress acting to extend the tax credits will soon become, quote, readily apparent to the public. Some Republicans have proposed a 1-year extension of the subsidies, which Jeffries opposes, arguing it provides only short-term relief, NPR has reported. GOP Representative Mike Lawler challenged Jeffries to support the 1-year extension, claiming Democrats knew the subsidies would expire. Jeffries countered that while billionaires receive permanent tax breaks under President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act working-class Americans should receive more certainty for health care. He framed the fight as a matter of fairness and fiscal responsibility, emphasizing that failing to act could leave millions uninsured. Hakeem Jeffries stressed that Democrats remain steadfast in their position and continue to push for a longer-term solution to protect ACA beneficiaries. Former U.S. Representative George Santos was released from prison last week after U.S. President Donald Trump commuted his federal fraud sentence, but local criminal exposure remains possible. Santos had served 3 months of a 7-year sentence for deception, fraud, and lying to Congress before Trump's intervention. Trump's clemency granted Santos, quote, immediate commutation of his entire sentence to time served, with no fines, restitution, probation, or supervised release. Santos was released shortly before 11 p.m. local time on Friday and picked up by his family, this according to his lawyer, Joe Murray. The clemency drew praise from Trump, who cited Santos's courage, conviction, and intelligence to always vote Republican. Santos had pleaded guilty to multiple fraud crimes and was sentenced in April to 87 months, the maximum allowed, and 2 years of supervised release, ABC News has reported. Nassau County District Attorney Ann Donnelly said her office cannot comment on ongoing investigations, but remains focused on prosecuting political corruption regardless of party affiliation. Her office declined to specify whether Santos faces any potential state-level charges. The district includes part of Nassau County, where local authorities could pursue criminal cases independent of federal actions. Santos's release underscores the distinction between federal clemency and potential state or local prosecution. Hey everybody, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. That way you can stay up to date on all of our news updates. Now let's go into our last block of news for today. A pardoned Capitol rioter, Christopher Monahan, was arrested last weekend for allegedly threatening to kill House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries in New York City. Court documents say Monahan sent texts stating he planned to, quote, eliminate Jeffries, and later entered a not guilty plea to a felony charge of making a terroristic threat. Monahan, who was pardoned by President Donald Trump after participating in the January 6 Capitol riot and serving prison time, was among the first to breach police barricades and enter the Senate chamber, CBS News has reported. Jeffries condemned the threat, emphasizing that violence would not stop him from speaking out, while authorities continue to review the case. Gold prices fell for a second day on Wednesday as investors took profits following a recent rally. Gold futures dropped 1.49%, while major mining stocks like Newmont and Barrick fell over 4% in pre-market trading. Analysts at UBS said the decline is largely technical, with no major economic or geopolitical events driving the pullback, and attributed it to slowing momentum and rising option volatility, CNBC has reported. Now, despite the 2-day drop, gold remains up more than 50% this year, and UBS expects the factors supporting record highs, such as inflation, tariffs, and political instability, to persist. China's first reusable rocket, Landspace's Zhou-3, advanced toward its inaugural flight with a successful static fire test on October the 20th. The test, part of the rocket's 3-day maiden flight campaign, followed a fueling trial at Landspace's Dongfeng Commercial Space Innovation Pilot Zone. Zhou-3, similar in design to SpaceX's Falcon 9, features a reusable first stage powered by 9 methane LOX Tianhui 12A engines and can carry about 40,350 pounds to low Earth orbit, Space.com has reported. Landspace plans further integration rehearsals and inspections before the rocket's first orbital launch and first stage recovery, building on previous tests and the success of its expandable Zhou-2 vehicle. Arizona sued the Republican-controlled U.S. House on Tuesday over the delayed swearing-in of Democratic Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva. Grijalva won a special election last month to fill the seat left vacant by her father, Raul Grijalva, but House Speaker Mike Johnson has kept lawmakers out of Washington until the Senate passes a measure to end the government shutdown. Arizona's lawsuit argues that the Constitution does not allow Johnson to deny a duly elected representative her office, and seeks a judge's order allowing Grijalva to be sworn in even if Johnson refuses, Reuters has reported. Grijalva's swearing in would shift the narrow House balance and enable her to support a petition forcing a vote on releasing unclassified records related to Jeffrey Epstein. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman will visit Washington, D.C. on November the 18th through the 19th to meet U.S. President Donald Trump, marking his first U.S. trip since early 2018 and advancing efforts to restore his international standing. The visit could pave the way for Saudi-Israeli normalization, which stalled during the recent Israel-Hamas war, while a more immediate outcome may be a U.S.-Saudi defense cooperation agreement on weapons sales, intelligence sharing, and joint strategic planning. President Trump has indicated ongoing discussions with the Saudis and expects an expansion of the Abraham Accords, though Saudi Arabia demands for a formal Palestinian state remain a potential hurdle, the Wall Street Journal has reported. The visit also follows heightened regional concerns about Israel's military actions and the delicate ceasefire, which will influence the timing and the scope of any agreement. An area near the White House was locked down on Tuesday night after a driver crashed into a security gate at 17th and E Street. The driver was immediately arrested by the Secret Service, and his vehicle was searched and then deemed safe. U.S. President Donald Trump was inside of the White House during the incident, the Daily Mail has reported. Authorities have not released the suspect's identity or the motive, and the road will remain closed until the car is towed, though the White House itself is not on lockdown. NASA has confirmed the discovery of a new quasi-moon named 2025 PN7, which is a small asteroid that travels almost perfectly in sync with Earth around the Sun. Detected by the University of Hawaii, the rock measures about 18 to 36 meters wide and follows a path that makes it appear to shadow our planet without being gravitationally bound to it. Scientists believe that 2025 PN7 has been accompanying Earth for about 60 years now and will likely stay until the year 2083 before it drifts away, Geek Spin has reported. It's one of only 8 known quasi-moons, offering researchers valuable insights into near-Earth asteroid behavior and orbital dynamics. The U.S. Department of Energy is offering nuclear energy companies access to weapons-grade plutonium from Cold War-era warheads to convert into fuel for advanced reactors, aiming to reduce reliance on Russian uranium. Companies, including Oklo and France's Nucleo, can apply for up to 19 megatons of plutonium, with selection potentially speeding up Nuclear Regulatory Commission approvals. This initiative supports small modular reactors, which require high-assay low-enriched uranium, currently controlled by Russia, while addressing growing electricity demand driven by data centers and artificial intelligence, the Financial Times has reported. Experts, however, warn of security risks in handling plutonium, and previous attempts to use it for civilian energy were abandoned due to high conversion cost and legal uncertainties over congressional control of nuclear waste. Warner Brothers Discovery, owner of HBO, CNN, and other media assets, announced on Tuesday that it is exploring a sale after receiving unsolicited interest from multiple parties. The company, valued at over $45 billion, said it will continue pursuing its planned split of cable networks from streaming and studio businesses while reviewing strategic alternatives. WBD's studio and franchise assets, including Harry Potter and DC Comics properties, could attract other studios, tech companies, or streaming platforms, though the company maintains a high bar for any deal, NBC News has reported. The move reflects broader media industry consolidation trends, as companies adjust to declining cable viewership and rising competition from streaming services. Drone attacks by Sudan's RSF paramilitary forces disrupted the planned reopening of Khartoum International Airport on Wednesday, more than a year and a half after it was closed due to the civil war. Explosions and drone strikes were reported across the capital, delaying domestic flights intended to mark government control of the city, which has been largely calm since the Sudanese armed forces pushed RSF forces out back in March. The airport reopening was a key step toward restoring international flights and encouraging civilians to return, as the government also undertakes reconstruction and plans to move ministries back to Khartoum, CBS News has reported. Meanwhile, the RSF continues heavy fighting in Darfur, particularly around the besieged city of El Fasher, intensifying Sudan's ongoing humanitarian crisis. Archaeologists, led by a University of Missouri professor, have uncovered a 2,200-year-old Roman water basin on the outskirts of Rome in the archaeological area of Gabi. The massive stone-lined structure, partly carved into bedrock, may have served as a monumental pool at the center of the city's forum, providing insight into early Roman city planning. Used for roughly 300 years before its abandonment around 50 AD, the basin contained intact vessels, lamps, and cups, possibly left as religious offerings or as part of a ritual closure, the Kansas City Star has reported. Gabi's largely preserved streets and foundations offer a rare look at early Roman life, since the town was abandoned before much later urban development covered older layers. A 24-year-old Chinese woman was arrested and charged over the theft of gold from Paris's Natural History Museum, part of a recent wave of high-profile French museum break-ins. The September 16th heist involved nearly 6 kilograms of native gold, including nuggets from Bolivia, Russia, California, and Australia, valued at around $1.7 million, though their historical and scientific worth was considered priceless. Investigators said the thief cut museum doors with a grinder, breached the display case with a blowtorch, and was caught trying to dispose of melted gold in Barcelona, CBS News has reported. The arrest comes amid other audacious French museum thefts, including a $102 million jewelry heist at the Louvre, raising concerns over security at the country's cultural institutions. Okay, everybody, that is our show for today. I hope all of you have enjoyed it, and I will see all of you tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time for another episode of The News with BC, and until then, I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.